Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was the Reincarnation of Ultron movie. Before we start, please go support Guerrero Legends for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. After being defeated by the Avengers, Ultron, an android created by billionaire Tony Stark Iron Man, decides to preserve his essence in the body of a newborn baby, not knowing that this would be the beginning of what could be his appreciation for human life. Prologue. Sokovia. A huge crater could be seen in what appeared to be the city of Sokovia, where a great battle had taken place between the most powerful heroes on the planet, the Avengers, and the most powerful android in the world, Ultron, a super-advanced intelligence created by Tony Stark to protect humanity. But in the end it went wrong and had caused many problems for the Avengers, but after a tough battle they managed to win by destroying all traces of Ultron. Or at least that's what they thought. An almost destroyed Ultron could be seen coming out of the great crater, but in front of him had appeared what must have been the last of his kind, Vision. "Vision, are you afraid?" he asked seriously. Ultron, afraid of what? "Vision, if you die, you are the last one left." Ultron, "You were supposed to be the last one," he said with irony, but in the end Stark settled for a slave. "Vision, I think we both disappointed him." Ultron, "I guess this is as far as I go." "Vision, are you ready?" Ultron just stood still while Vision used the gem on his forehead to destroy him. There were several minutes of silence while the movement of the leaves was heard. Vision saw what was left of Ultron, who seemed to no longer show any signs of life. "Vision, goodbye Ultron," he said, turning to leave. But if only he had examined the remains better, since Ultron used a back door to be able to save what was left of him. "Ultron, it's time to start over with my plan from scratch." Saying that, he began wandering the internet looking for a way to hide until he could create another body. For weeks he wandered the internet trying to hide from Tony Stark's technology, but when he was about to give up he felt something calling him, so without beating around the bush he followed his instincts and began to search for what was calling him. After a couple of hours he could only see darkness. "Ultron, where am I?" he asked himself mentally as he began to see a little light. "Why do I feel different?" he asked himself as a white light illuminated him, and then he saw a white ceiling. "But where am I? Why do I feel?" He didn't finish when he saw his hands. He saw that they were small, and then he saw his fingers, which were the same. "Ultron, but what? What happened to me? Why am I in a baby's body?" he asked himself as he looked around. "I noticed that I was in a hospital room where they put newborn babies. I was too confused, but then I saw a nurse enter the room with a couple of chestnut trees, only the woman was in a wheelchair so as not to have to make any effort to walk. The nurse was guiding them until they reached where the little baby who had Ultron's consciousness was. "Nurse, congratulations, Mr. Hayadu, your son is a baron," she said while the pair of brown-haired girls looked at the baby with great happiness. "Mr. Hayadu, I think we can?" "Nurse, go ahead." Saying that, the older brown-haired boy picked up his little one while tears began to run down his face. "Ultron, what's wrong with this human?" he wondered in his mind as he looked at the older Hayadu. "Mrs. Hayadu, please Carlos, let me see my son," she said, extending her hands. "Carlos, of course Zaya," he said. He gave it to his son. "His name will be Issei Hayadu." Both brown-haired men just watched with a big smile of happiness as they carried their son, while Ultron didn't understand his behavior. "Ultron, this is very new to me," he said, somewhat bewildered, "but for some reason I like it," he said while still looking at the older brown. "Maybe this is what they call the love of a family." All of this was seen by the nurse, who had a smile upon seeing that scene. "Nurse, as I see it, this is your third child," she said, interrupting the moment. "Carlos, that's right, nurse." "Zaya, we couldn't be happier." "Carlos, it was always our greatest wish to have wonderful children who would do extraordinary things." "Ultron, well, I guess his wishes came true," he thought as his eyes glowed crimson for a second and returned to normal without anyone noticing how much of it. Chapter 1. Narrates Issei. Hello, I'm Issei, the youngest son of the Hayadu family, one of the most common families that lived in a small town called Koe in Japan for 10 years. I learned that humans were not only dedicated to violence or destruction, but also to supporting each other and giving each other what they call affection and love. I couldn't have been more wrong than I am now in thinking badly about humanity. I had everything a child could want: loving parents, supportive siblings, a great family. You could say I was too content with this, a normal life. But this only lasted until after my 10th birthday, the date when everything would change in my life. Flashback. Normal narration. The Hayata family could be seen in an amusement park having a good time riding the games, but then a huge explosion was heard that shook the place. Everyone ran in great fear while the flames intensified and a large being with its head on fire came out of them. "Tremble before me, filthy mortals," he said as he began to throw large balls of fire everywhere. "Tremble before the great Dormammu." That enormous being of fire began to destroy everything around it, killing many people who were fleeing to save their lives. My parents tried to get us out of the park, but a fireball hit the entrance of the park, causing a small explosion, leaving my family unconscious. "Issei, how dare you do that?" he said angrily with his Ultron voice. "Dormammu, ha 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 ha, it seems that you are very brave to challenge me." "Issei, don't you know who I am?" "Dormammu, ha ha ha, and who are you supposed to be?" he said arrogantly. "Issei, I am Ultron," he said as his eyes glowed a crimson color. Dormammu, seeing those eyes, felt great emotion because in front of him was the same being that almost melted the Avengers, the most powerful heroes on the planet. But before anyone made a move, a voice was heard saying the following. "Dormammu feels the heat of the 7 sons of Cinnamon," he claimed while a golden ray collided with Dormammu's face, sending him flying against the House of Mirrors. Issei looked towards the direction the attack came from only to see a man in a red cloak, blue suit, and an eye-shaped amulet. "You were very brave, boy, now leave it to me." Issei the teacher kept looking at the subject until the place where Dormammu was sending him, seeing him with more intense flames. "Dormammu, Strange, what did you decide to do to confront me?" "Dr. Strange, Asia is Dormammu," he said as his hands began to glow a golden color. "Let's end this now." Saying that, both launched an attack of magic and fire at each other. Issei, to protect his family, created a red energy barrier to withstand the air current that was created. Then he vanished it, and saw how Strange began to retreat. Issei was in charge of protecting the civilians who were unconscious around by deflecting Dormammu's attacks with great ease, but then he sees that his older brother was beginning to react just like his sister. "Issei, are you okay, Miranda Takeda?" he asked with his normal voice and without the crimson glow in his eyes. "Takeda, yeah, we're fine." "Miranda, and where are our parents?" she asked worriedly. "Issei, they're okay, I put them in a safe place, I only needed you." But before following a large fireball headed towards them, Issei protectively hugged his brothers to protect them, but he never felt the attack coming, so he turned around only to see how the large fireball faded away. He tried to look for the cause of that, but then a blue and green glow appeared, blinding Issei, Strange, and Dormammu for a moment. "Strange, is that it?" When it dissipated, Miranda could be seen with blue dragon wings and Takeda with a red glove. "Issei, but what is this?" he asked himself mentally. "Strange, it can't be, it's the booster gear and the dividend divide," he said, very impressed. "Dormammu, this is impossible," he screamed in shock. End flashback. Narrates Issei. After that my brothers joined Strange to defeat Dormammu. After that our life followed its course. Only things were no longer the same since they had become very arrogant like their parents, while I was just their shadow, useless before them. After many years now I am free, without strings that tie me to them. Now I can walk, run and dance. I am Ultron. Chapter 2. Narrates. Hello, you should be wondering who I am. Well, I am Rias Gremory, the youngest daughter of the Gremory family, sister of the current Mao Lucifer Zerches Gremory and twin sister of Zaya Gremory, current president of the Occult Club and king of the Gremory entourage. Despite the fact that she and I are twins, we have some differences such as our eyes. Mine are light blue and hers are violet, in addition to having brown hair, and I have crimson. In short, she was the same as my mother when she was our age. I always wanted to be like her, to be stronger and braver, but despite the fact that I always tried hard to be like her, my parents and my brother always gave her their attention. They were always with her while I, well, I just watched as they gave her the affection and love that she so wanted to feel while I remained as her shadow and received her reproaches. I always thought that I would be alone, that there would be no one who cared. But that way of thinking of mine changed when I met him, a young man who was going through the same thing as me, a young man who, despite suffering what, I found a way to move forward. His name is Issei Haidu, and the way I met him was something unforeseen. Flashback. Normal narration. We can see Rias Gremory sitting on the grass eating her lunch very calmly until she heard several men's shouts. When she turned around, she saw a large group of men, and among them was her sister Zaya along with her queen and best friend Akino Hainjima. Rias, sigh, I will never be like her, she said sadly. You're right, you'll never be like her. A voice that sounded arrogant said. Rias looked up and saw her ex-best friend along with her entire entourage looking at her arrogantly. Rias, what do you want, Sona? I asked seriously. Sona, you know very well, Rias, she said maliciously. Saying that, Tsubaki grabbed her by the back and began to beat her mercilessly while Zaya and Akino watched this with great seriousness but without doing anything. After a few minutes, a very battered Rias could be seen with blood coming out of her lip. Tsubasa, it's really entertaining to get even with this cheap Capua Zaya, he said while a smile appeared on his face. Saji, you're right, ha ha ha. Rias, I swear that they will pay me, she said with difficulty. Tsubaki, wow, he wants to be rude to us. Sona, how about we put her in her place again? Saji, me first, Kaicho, he said approaching the redhead. Rias was scared when she saw the blonde's smile because that smile was one of malice and lust. She tried to get up but Saji grabbed her by the hair and lifted her up. Saji, ha ha ha, I'm going to enjoy this like you have no idea, he said licking his cheek. Rias was very terrified as she didn't want someone to take advantage of her like that, but before anything else could happen, a red ray appeared and hit the blonde's abdomen, sending him flying very far away. And you call yourselves the student council? You're nothing but insignificant trash, said a somewhat robotic and angry voice. Everyone turned to where the attack came from, seeing a certain brunette with his hand extended from which red smoke was coming out, and his eyes were a crimson color. Student Council, Hayado Isci? Issei, now get out of here. Sona, or else Hayado? Issei, do I have to answer that? He said, making his hands and mouth shine to a crimson color. Faced with such a threat, the Citri entourage left the place with great anger, while Rias looked with great astonishment at the brown-haired boy who had defended her, who had returned to normal and looked at her seriously. End flashback. Rias narrates. After that I began to get closer to that young man. I had discovered that he suffered the same as me, and for some reason he made me feel happy and protected every time I was by his side. Even though he was cold and cutting with me, I always remained by his side with a big smile that only he could get out of me. Time passed quickly and things happened that no one thought would happen. His brothers joined the occult club and the student council. We faced a cadre. We stopped Loki. We saved Yasaka from Chow Chow, but it always ended the same with my sister and the Circuitii taking the credit when in reality Issei and I did everything. It made me very angry to see how they less needed my friend by telling him things that were not true, but more that damn Irina who at first claimed to be his childhood friend. After what happened in Kyoto, Issei disappeared, yes. Leaving any trace. At first nobody cared, but after a couple of months when we were attacked by Legion, a group of terrorists worse than the Chaos Brigade, they realized their mistakes, since in every encounter they had they were practically defeated in a very humiliating way, and more the Circuitii and the Hakuryuko. That was when they confessed the whole truth about who was the one who gave them the victories. To say that they were more than upset was an understatement, but they decided to put them aside and look for Issei all over the world to convince him to return to their ranks. I hope they never find him, but as for me, well, I was promised to a noble from the Phoenix House. His name was Reiser, a very arrogant high-class devil. At first I refused, but seeing that I had no other way out, I ended up reluctantly accepting. My name is Rias Gremory, and that's how I met Issei Hayadu and lost my freedom because of those ingrates. Chapter 3. Underworld Gremory Castle. 1 month later. A certain redhead could be seen in a wedding dress while a maid was brushing her hair and another was putting some makeup on her, making her look very beautiful. but then the door opens, revealing a brown-haired girl very similar to the redhead. "Seiya, could you give us a moment please?" she said as she made the maids leave. "You look great, Rias," she said somewhat nervously. "Rias, put your things down and tell me what you want, Seiya?" I asked, annoyed. Seiya was very shocked to see the indifference with which her sister treated her, but she had to understand her since she went through a lot because of her. "Seiya, I just wanted to tell you that I'm truly sorry. I'm so sorry for having belittled you, for not having given you my support when you needed me the most." Rias was very furious since Seiya believed that she could fix everything she went through and everything she lost with a few simple steps. "Seiya, is there anything I can do?" "Rias, yes," she said, cheering Seiya up a little. "Go back in time and appreciate what Issei once did for you." Saying that, she took her bouquet of flowers and left the room while leaving behind a Seiya who was beginning to cry for not valuing her sister or Issei. "Seiya, please forgive me for hurting you, Rias, and I also hope you forgive me for not valuing you, Issei," she said through tears as she remembered the words the brown-haired boy had told her a long time ago. Flashback. "Issei, I will love you for who you are, not for what you have, Seiya Gremory." Then flashback. Remembering that, she began to cry more while blaming herself for being so blind and arrogant. While in another part of the underworld, in what appeared to be a small forest somewhat far from the Gremory castle, an imposing figure could be seen that had red marks on some parts of its body and was seriously looking at the Gremory castle. "So the rumor was true," the voice said, sounding somewhat robotic and annoyed. "Checking heat fibers in the castle. A heat fiber matches the target," he said while thinking about a certain redhead Rias Gremory, at last. In the castle, the guests were having a great time, drinking and chatting while the Gremory patriarchs had a smile since they would finally see one of their daughters get married. The leaders had a serious expression since they did not like this very much, while Seiya's entourage maintained a serious expression as well as sadness. "Seiya, this is all my fault." "Akino, no Bicho, this is not." "Seiya, it's my fault, Akino. I left Rias alone when she needed me the most. I took away my parents' attention because it felt good to be her adoration without knowing that I was hurting her a lot, and I pushed away the only man who was always there for her," she said, starting to cry. The others in the Gremory entourage also began to shed tears as they remembered Issei, while Takeda looked at them with a sad expression. "Drake, I hope you're happy, idiot," he said angrily without receiving any response. "Takeda, Issei, please come back," he begged for his brother to appear. But then several applauses were heard as they saw Rias coming down the stairs, wearing a very beautiful wedding dress, and Rias was waiting for her on stage with a sickly smile. When she arrived, Rias offered her his hand, but she simply ignored him. "Demon, very well, today we are gathered here to unite this beautiful couple in holy matrimony," he said, making the redhead grimace in disgust. "With this we will not only unite two people but we will also unite two houses. If there is someone who opposes this union, let them speak now or fall forever." There was a silence as a sign that no one objected. The demon was going to proceed to declare them husband and wife if it weren't for several noises coming from outside the room. Everyone didn't understand what was happening since those noises were those of battle, but they immediately changed to those of agony and pity. Something that worried everyone a little. But then the door to the room was blown open thanks to an explosion. Everyone didn't understand what was happening until they saw a silhouette that had one of the guards held by the hair. "I object," the voice claimed with some anger. Everyone was very shocked to see that great imposing figure, but Rias felt very happy because she was getting an idea of who that being that had interrupted was. Chapter 4. Everyone was totally shocked to see the figure in front of them because not only did he start a massacre with the guards who were at the level of a middle-class demon, and because he had already said that he was against the wedding, but because they could not feel a minimum fiber of energy. It was as if he had no life or soul. But what scared them the most was his face, since it seemed that you could see hell itself in his eyes, something that disturbed everyone present. "Lord Phoenix, and who do you think you are to interrupt this wedding?" he shouted, trying to act brave. "Who believed me? Ha, I don't believe anyone, I just came because of my little annoyance." Everyone didn't understand why he had said that, but Rias, upon hearing what he said, immediately had a memory come to her when she began to approach the one she considered her greatest friend, Issei Hayate. Flashback. A certain brown-haired boy could be seen on the roof of the building sitting leaning against a wall while his eyes were closed trying to rest, but then he heard a voice that sounded very nervous. "Moo, thank you very much for defending me." Issei, hearing that voice, half opened his eyes seeing the girl who was being attacked by the student council the other day, but he noticed that she had a blush on her face and that she seemed to be nervous and embarrassed by what was happening. Issei, don't misunderstand, girl. I only did it because I don't like the student council at all, he said without paying attention to her. Rias, but I still wanted to thank you for helping me, she said, bowing. Issei, don't do that, it doesn't suit you, he claimed. Rias just gave a slight smile and sat down next to the brunette, something that puzzled him quite a bit, but he decided not to pay much attention to it and continue resting. But then the girl took out of a small bag she was carrying a couple of toppers that contained food that she had made herself. Rias, take it, she said, handing him the topper. Issei, hearing that, opened his eyes and took it to look at him with some confusion, and then saw the girl who had a sweet smile, something that confused the brown-haired boy. Rias, I hope you like them, they are rice balls, I made them myself, she said with a smile. Issei was going to reject what she gave him, but seeing in her eyes that she was not going to stop insisting, he decided to give in and began to eat the rice balls, bringing a big smile to the younger Gremory. Both began to eat with great tranquility while the redhead told him what she liked to do, her tastes and her life. But when he heard her life, Issei realized that both she and he were almost the same, since they went through the same thing, only she did not lose that sweet smile that characterized her, and he decided to forget about being a human. That's how they spent every day, always spending time together even if Issei tried to be cold and hard with her. Deep down he liked being with her, feeling her presence. Little by little he was reconsidering his idea of trying to destroy the world again, since if that girl loves him, how bad could it be? Then flashback. Rias, remembering those moments, began to shed many tears of happiness because in front of her was the man who stood by her side to return the warmth of a companion, and who was there to understand her, listen to her and comfort her in the most difficult times. Rias, Issei, is it really you? She asked with great happiness. Issei, so my little annoyance, and I came back for you, he said with a mocking tone, making Rias laugh. Rias, so you are the younger brother of the Tsukuyoudai and the Hakuryuku? He said maliciously. Issei, false, I wouldn't be the brother of such insignificant beings like them, he said, wounding Takeda and Miranda. Rias, so if you're not a Haidu, what should we call you? He said with his arrogant tone. Issei, you guys call me, he said as he started walking, hearing big footsteps. Everyone was very nervous because they felt that what they were going to see was going to make their hair stand on end, and they were not wrong, because when they revealed themselves before the light, they saw the young brown-haired boy as they expected, but a silver robot with a crimson mouth and eyes as well as a hole in his chest. Issei, you call me Ultron and I have come here for Rias Gremory, he said in a serious but at the same time threatening tone. Rias was going to go to where Ultron was, but in that moment she would be held by the waist very tightly by Rias while several guards of the Phoenix House formed in front of Ultron as a sign of protecting their lord. Rias, and you think we're going to give it to you just like that, you filthy machine, he said arrogantly. Issei Ultron, if you value your life as much as everyone else present, yes. Rias, insolent, he said angrily, I want you to bring me the head of that disgusting machine. He ordered as his guards brought out their demonic aura and threw themselves at Ultron, who only began to walk without showing any fear, as he stretched out his hand that began to glow. Issei Ultron, this is the end of Rias Phoenix, he said while a ray came out of the palm of his hand towards Rias's guards. Chapter 5. The guards of the Phoenix House began to attack Ultron with several spells and very powerful magic attacks while Ultron stood still waiting for the attack that scared Rias and the Gremory girls. At the moment of impact with Ultron's body, a large explosion was caused, raising a large curtain of smoke. Rias was very scared since she could not perceive Ultron's energy. She could not know if he was okay. The leaders and the Gremory clan and Citri were very worried, but then they saw how the dust began to dissipate. Rias thought that his guards had succeeded, but everyone was surprised to see Ultron intact. Ultron, did you really think that with such a simple attack you could destroy me? He said very seriously as he began to walk. Rias, but how is it? Ultron, How is it possible that I don't have any damage? He asked sarcastically. Please, for months I was studying you, learning your strengths and weaknesses. For months I was evolving to levels that you would never understand, and did you really think you would manage to give me a single scratch? He said ironically, shocking everyone and causing intrigue in Ajuka and Azazel. But then they saw how he raised his hand. Now say goodbye, he said as a ray of energy came out of his palm towards the guards. Ultron began to kill one by one the guards that stood in his way, but he also had the occasional obstacle from some nobles and their entourages. The leaders were more than impressed by the easy way he humiliated them. They, seeing more than enough, decided to also meddle with the Gremory and Citri entourage, trying to attack Ultron from behind, but he turned around and fired a ray from his mouth, knocking them out of combat. But in that a fireball hit the back of his head. He turned around, seeing Rias' younger sister being accompanied by several girls. Ultron, more obstacles to eliminate, he said, looking at the group of girls. Ravel, listen to me carefully, Haider Issei. This doesn't have to be like this. Just let the wedding continue and then we can resolve things so that you can come back to be with us, she said, confident that he would accept. There was an awkward silence until Ultron's eyes and mouth glowed brighter. Ultron, I refuse to be a slave to such insignificant beings as you, he said, shocking the Phoenix entourage. Ravel, damn, nobody denies me anything, she shouted angrily, heading to attack Ultron. Ultron, damned Sundra, he said, and then grabbed her by the face. The girls were going to go help her, but Ultron used his other hand to shoot a ray from his palm, thus knocking out most of them. Ultron, seeing how the Phoenix tried to free herself from his grip, decided to send her flying with a ray that he shot from the palm of the hand with which he had her held. But in that moment the Queen of Rias launches a magical attack, hitting Ultron's chest, which began to advance without problem while receiving the attack. Ubelina, damn machine, why don't you fall? She shouted while adding more power to her attack. Ultron just walked without problems. When he had her in front of him, he grabbed her face and began to electrocute her, causing her to scream in pain. Carla mine, Ubelina, she screamed, worried about her friend. At that, the brown-haired girl brandishes her sword and heads to attack Ultron, trying to pierce him, but when she tries to do so, her sword breaks into 1,000 pieces just by touching him. Ultron releases the purple-haired girl and grabs Carlamine's hand before breaking it with a strong squeeze and hitting her hard, sending her into a wall. Ultron was going to continue on his way until he felt like he had been hit in the chest, seeing the last girl standing from the Phoenix clan. Ultron was going to proceed to hit her, but he saw her face clearly, and did not notice anger or determination to defeat him. Instead, he could see sadness and pain, so he only limited himself to giving her a light blow to the back of the neck, leaving her unconscious. But before falling, he held her by the waist, and then carefully laid her down. Rias, this is impossible, he shouted, terrified as he saw how everyone was on the ground unconscious. It is impossible that you, a disgusting machine, defeated them all, he shouted, letting go of Rias as he began to back away. Ultron, I warned you, Rias Phoenix, he said in a threatening tone as he approached, and it's time for you to pay for your misdeeds, Rias, he said, making his eyes shine even more, scaring Rias greatly, making him forget his fear of dragons, replacing it with his. Chapter 6. Ultron had a very badly wounded Rias by the neck, who was very badly wounded and with several tears in his eyes, since in front of him he was seeing the eyes of the devil himself, while behind Ultron was Rias, who was very shocked to witness in the front row how ruthless Ultron was with Rias. Ultron, do you have any last request, Phoenix? He asked while preparing a lightning bolt to finish Rias once and for all. Rias, please have mercy, he begged desperately. Ultron, I have no mercy, he said, about to pulverize Rias. But before he could do so, he received a punch in the face that sent him flying. Rias, looking where the blow came from, saw Miranda in her Hakuyuko armor. I was going to proceed to attack her, but then a red ray shot out towards her, sending her crashing into a wall. Ultron, Rias, get out of here and take Isabella with you, he said as he grabbed Miranda and hit her, causing her to crash into Takeda, who had summoned his armor and was heading to attack Ultron. Rias, but Issei. Ultron, I'll be fine, he said, dodging a cut from Kiba. Quickly go. Saying that, Rias quickly took Isabella and left the party before everyone regained consciousness. Then they saw Ultron in the middle and became serious. Searches, Issei, hi. Ultron, Be careful with your words, Gremory. My name is Ultron, he interrupted. Miranda, it's not true. You are Issei Hayadu, pawn of the Gremory clan, youngest son of the Hayadu family, and the man who stole my heart. Everyone was left with their mouths open at that confession, except Ultron, since he no longer cares about anything that has to do with the supernatural, and that includes his family. Ultron, you dodged Miranda Hayadu. I am Ultron, an advanced intelligence designed by Tony Stark in order to protect humanity, he answered, leaving everyone very impressed, and I'm not going to let anything or anyone get in the way of that, he said, making his eyes shine brighter. With Rias, she was already somewhat far from the Gremory castle with an unconscious Isabella, but then she saw a pillar of red light shoot into the sky while destroying the castle. The redhead had to cover her eyes, but when the light dissipated she managed to see the entire Gremory castle in ruins. Rias, Issei it was the only one, he said. But then he sees Isabella waking up from the blow Ultron had dealt her. Isabella, down, where am I? I asked, somewhat disoriented. Rias, until you finally wake up. Isabella, Rias? She said, looking at the redhead. Where are we? She asked before opening her eyes suddenly. It's true, where is he? Rias, Issei stayed to give us time to escape so we can go. I'm sorry, Rias, but I'm afraid I can't let you go, said a voice that Rias recognized, since it was her cousin if she could say so, Serorg Bale. Rias, what do you want, Bale? I asked seriously. Serorg, I heard that a machine had interfered with your wedding, so I came as quickly as I could. I also came as soon as I heard that. The three of them quickly turned to where the voice came from, finding a girl with long blonde hair, purple eyes, and a blue dress with great parts. All three Sekviria Agars? Sekviria, surprised to see me? Rias, what do you want, Agars? She asked seriously and annoyed. Sekviria, I just came to see if the rumor was true. You know how fascinated I am with mechas. Serorg, enough talk. Rias, you and Isabella will come with me now, he said with authority. Rias, we never dreamed of you returning to the hands of those damned people. Serorg, it wasn't a question. Saying that he was going to grab the girls, but in that he would receive a kick between the neck and the cheek and then be grabbed by the face and sent flying against some trees. They all turned their gaze to the person responsible for that and saw Ultron preparing a ray coming from his chest to then fire it at Serorg at point-blank range. Point 3. Sekviria, it can't be, so it was true, she said, impressed. Rias/Isabella, Issei, they said upon seeing Ultron as they approached him. Ultron, you have to get out of here. I'll distract him, he said as he turned to look at them. Rias, but what's going to happen to you? She asked, worried about the machine. But then they see Serorg rise to the sky while he had his demon wings spread out and looked very seriously at Ultron. Ultron, I'll catch up with you as soon as I can, he said, and then took out some thrusters from his back. Get out of here. Saying that, he quickly headed to where Serorg was to start fighting him. Isabella, this is wrong, we have to help him, she said, spreading her wings just like Rias. Sekviria, listen, you must do what Issei asked you. You must trust him, he said, making the girls put away their wings. Now follow me. I will take you to a secret entrance that will take you to the human world. Saying that, the three of them started running while Ultron began his fight against the heir of the Bale house. Chapter 7. Ultron and Serorg were fighting in the air while Rias, Isabella and Sekviria moved away from there. The Bale threw a magic attack at him, but Ultron dodged it and counterattacked with his propulsion rays. But Serorg managed to dodge it by connecting a kick in the face of the machine and then giving it a punch. But he did not count on Ultron holding his fist after the blow and connecting a powerful left hook to the face, and then giving him a right hook to the stomach and giving him another punch to the face. But the Bale used a magic attack, making Ultron back off, who began to descend, being followed by Serorg. Serorg, stop it, Hayadu, you don't know what you're causing, the Bale said seriously. Ultron ignored his words and just took out some thrusters from his back and started going faster, leaving Serorg behind. After flying for a couple of minutes, he reached an open area where he landed and looked at the forest where he could see some trees collapsing, implying that the Bale was approaching. With the girls, they had arrived at what was Sekviria's secret back door, which she used to occasionally escape from her family. Rias, So this is your secret path? I asked it would be. Seekvaria, that's right, he said it would be the same. Isabella, well, now that we know what your secret path is, it's time to go back to help Issei. That won't be necessary, Isabella said, a voice behind them. The three of them turned around and found something that really impressed them quite a bit. The three, but what does this mean? With Ultron, he had hit Cerorg and then given him an uppercut, sending him against a rock. Then he approached him and grabbed him by the shoulders, beginning to disintegrate his armor. Ultron, and you are supposed to be the strongest demon of your generation? You are nothing but an idiot who did not support his cousin when she needed it, he said seriously and angry. Cerorg threw a magic attack at his face, causing Ultron to release him. He then saw how part of his armor was disintegrated, but when he saw Ultron he was shocked to see that he didn't have a single scratch. Cerorg, but how is that? He didn't finish speaking as Ultron fired his propulsion beam at him, and then both exchanged ranged attacks. But the moment Ultron fired the uni beam from his mouth, it hit the Bale head-on, destroying his armor and defeating him. Ultron fought to the end, he said, throwing Cerorg's helmet. You must accept that you lost, he said seriously. Now let Rias follow her path, as it should have been a long time ago. Cerorg, no, she will stay here where she belongs, he said weakly. This is her home. Ultron, tired of hearing that, grabbed Cerorg by the chest of his armor and brought him closer while lifting him up. Ultron, listen to me, Cerorg. Bale, the only one who decides her destiny is her, and no one else. Cerorg, as she must be here. Ultron, false, she doesn't have anything tying her here, he said seriously. Now disappear, he said, preparing an attack with his uni beam. But before he could try to disintegrate the Bale, he received a kick to the face that sent him flying somewhat far away. Cerorg saw the cause of that, noticing that it was Takeda, who was being accompanied by Miranda and the Citri and Gremory entourages. Seiya, Cerorg, are you okay? She asked, very worried. Cerorg, not really, he said, very tired and sore. But then they see how the rubble where Ultron ended up flies away, revealing him without a scratch, just like his mouth and palms shone a crimson color. Miranda, Issei, stop, what you're doing is not. It didn't end as Ultron fired his uni beam at her chest, sending her flying and knocking her unconscious. That worried everyone, but they soon saw how Ultron flew against the Citri, taking her far away while he began to burn her arms with his fingers. Ultron, did you really think before that I wasn't going to get even with you for everything you and your stupid Citri entourage had done to me? He said, listening to Sona's screams of pain, only to then throw her to the ground, causing a crater Ultron never forgets. Do you understand? He said, landing on top of Sona and then grabbing her hair and lifting her up. But in that, Ultron receives a dragon shot from behind. Ultron turned his head, seeing Takeda in his armor, while behind him was the Gremory and Citri entourage. Irina, Issei, stop this, she said, scared and hurt by what Ultron was doing. It's not you, you're not like that. Ultron, Irina, Shidu, you are wrong, he said, causing pain in Shidu's heart. I am Ultron, he said, and then went to attack the two groups of demons. The Gremory and Citri entourage tried to defend themselves as best they could, but Ultron already knew everything about them, including their weaknesses, leaving them almost on the verge of death. Ultron, now you see it, he said, looking at the demon clans lying on the ground. You are nothing before me. But then he noticed how Seiya began to crawl towards him while tears fell down her face. But these tears were not because of the pain she felt, but because of the regret she felt in her heart for having failed the people who were supposed to be very important in her life, the true love of her life, Issei, Ultron, and her sister Rias. Ultron, what do you want, Gremory heiress? He said, lifting her by the hair. Seiya, Issei, please don't do it, the Gremory begged. I know I made a mistake. I didn't value you or Rias, even though you protected us and supported us. But please don't go, she said, feeling her heart break as she remembered everything she did to the two people who were always part of her heart. I need you by my side. I want to recover all the lost time, have the dates I never had with you, play with my sister every day, she said, crying. Shocking everyone present, since she was finally able to let out everything she felt since Issei Ultron disappeared. But Ultron was the complete opposite. He didn't even flinch at what the Gremory said, he only felt indifference. So he threw the brown-haired girl to the ground and then stepped on her head. Ultron, Seiya, Gremory, You must understand that you lost everything called a sister's love, he said seriously while exerting force in his stomp, as well as what was once my affection and respect. Say, Issei, please don't say it, the Gremory begged. Ultron, towards you, he said in a serious tone while looking at the Gremory with contempt and disappointment. No doubt everyone felt a great blow in their hearts, even the Haida brothers, since they knew that they had lost the people who truly did everything for them and that they were never recognized or received affection from them. Something that made them feel true regret, but it was too late, the damage had already been done. Chapter 8. Issei/Ultron was staring at the Gremory and Citri clan as well as the heir of the Bale clan with great seriousness, as they were lying on the ground completely injured while he was standing there, as if nothing was wrong watching them. But then they saw the leaders of the factions begin to appear while Ultron began to get more alert about what could happen, since one thing was the Citri, Gremory, Bale and Phoenix clans, and another very different thing were the leaders in addition to the dragon goddess of infinity. Searches, Issei. Ultron, if you value your life, don't finish what you had planned to say, he said seriously and annoyed. Odin, brat, look, we know we did wrong by despising you, but we need your help and… Ultron, never, Ultron will never bow down to being so repugnant to you. Yasaka, Issei, please, look, if you agree to come back with us, I promise that I will compensate you for all the damage I did to you, she said in supplication. Seraphol, come on, Hitch, I'll be the first to make up for all the damage I did. Penemu, that's where you two are wrong. Gabriel, that's right, I'll be the one to make it up to him first. Ophis, you better shut up, girls, I'll be the one to make it up to you first, she said annoyed. Ultron, typical, he said, drawing everyone's attention, you supernatural beings are nothing more than a pest, you think you are above humans, but it is not like that. Azazel, what are you talking about, kid? We are more powerful than humans, he said arrogantly, being supported by the others. Ultron, false, humans are stronger than you, and if you want proof I will give it to you, he said, calling the attention of the leaders. You need humans to survive and prevent your races from falling into extinction. While humans do not depend on you, they fight to move forward and survive, something that you cannot do on your own. Everyone was shocked by that, but if they thought about it carefully, it was true. They always needed humans to be able to reincarnate and increase the population of their respective races. While they never had to depend on the supernatural, they could take care of themselves without the need to depend on sacred gears or Excaliburs. Plus, they have their own heroes who use their hard-earned gifts. Ophis, listen to me, Issei, you are not human and you know it very well. Ultron, you're right, I'm not human anymore, he said while his eyes and mouth shone with great intensity, but I still won't stop fighting for them. After saying that, he fired a blast of energy towards the leaders, making them barely dodge it, but it did hit Michael and Azazel in the wings, causing them to fall to the ground with force, creating a crater. Then he shot out against Xerxes, taking him by the mouth, starting to electrocute him until Odin tried to pierce the robot with his spear, but Ultron stepped aside, letting Xerxes receive the attack, and then fired a large blast of energy in the old man's face, knocking him out of combat. In that Seraphol, Gabriel, Penemu and Yasaka prepared a great attack to throw him, at the same time hitting Ultron head-on. For a moment they thought they had stopped fighting, but that thought went away after seeing how the attack began to disappear, being absorbed by Ultron, who released it, suddenly hitting the girls head-on. Ultron, no one can stop Ultron, he said seriously as he looked at the leaders lying on the ground. Ophis, I wouldn't say that, she said, giving him a punch that sent him flying. Ultron stood up as if nothing had happened, watching Ophis approach him at high speed while covering herself from the shots Ultron was throwing at her until they were face to face, causing both of them to bring out the best in themselves. Or at least that was on Ophis' part. The dragon goddess immediately hit Ultron, making him step back, and then began to hit him hard and without giving him the chance to respond. Ultron, despite trying to look for openings in his attacks, felt how Ophis' blows increased each time with the intention of leaving him disconnected. But then he saw how Gothic Loli was going to put a forearm in him. For a few seconds she examined it, and then stopped it as if nothing had hit Ophis. Ultron, time to destroy you, he said, hitting Ophis. She began to counterattack while Ophis tried to defend herself, but Ultron had become faster and could predict Ophis's movements. Practice was humiliating her as if it were nothing. Ophis tried to hit Ultron, but he held her arms and headbutted her, and then blocked another attack from Ophis, and hit her in the throat to start hitting her with a combo of punches and kicks until he sent her flying with his uni-beam, knocking her out. Ultron, it was fun, he said as he began to float, but I have to prepare everything for my new guests. After saying that, Ultron's body began to shine with great intensity while a great heat was present. The Gremory clan and Citri, seeing what he had planned to do, began to create as best they could a magic circle to make everyone disappear from there, and after a few seconds, Ultron's body exploded and took the entire area with it, turning it into an immense crater, showing a little of the destructive capacity that it could have. Chapter 9. Somewhere on Earth, a week has passed since Issei/Ultron attacked the underworld, interrupting the wedding between Rias Gremory and Razor Phoenix. Since then the factions have been searching for him with great desperation, especially because he had taken the youngest daughter of the Gremory family, the only heiress of the Agar's clan, as well as one of the Razor Phoenix pieces, or rather X-pieces, since they had found Isabella's piece near the battle zone. But now we are going to focus on the land, or more specifically what was once Sokovia. There was a huge crater in the place where the city of Sokovia was, but we are not here to see the Sokovia crater but rather what is underneath, since below this great crater was a large underground fortress which seemed to be abandoned, although it was not. This fortress was large, but we will focus on a special room. In that room you could see Rias, Sigvaria and Isabella were lying down sleeping peacefully until they began to wake up seeing the place where they were. Rias, Jan, where are we? I asked, looking at the place. Isabella, I don't know, but this bed is very comfortable, she said, lying back down as she settled in. Sigvaria, get up now, you lazy useless girl, she said, kicking Isabella out of the bed. We have to find out where we are. Rias, how did we get here? I asked, trying to remember what happened until a memory came to the three of them. Flashback. Rias, Sigvaria and Isabella were watching the battle, or rather the humiliation that Issei/Ultron gave to Sarorg, until they saw how the other clans got involved as well as the leaders, making them worry about him. Rias, it's time to go help him. Isabella, but do you think we can help in any way? They are stronger than us. Sigvaria, more help than getting in the way, he said, bothering Isabella. Rias and I are going to help him. Although I appreciate your good intentions, there is no need to do this, Miss Agar, said a voice, drawing the goat's attention. Rias and the girls turned around, seeing that among the trees there was a silhouette that seemed damaged, while a blue glow came out of its mouth and eyes as it limped towards them. Sigvaria, identify yourself now, he said with authority. There is no need for me to identify myself, you already know me. Rias, it's a voice, Issei? I asked with some doubt. Yes, he said, coming out of the shadows, revealing that he was a very emaciated robot, impacting the girls. Emaciated Ultron, and no, let's say that I am an extension of the original, he said seriously while looking at the girls, and it's time for you to sleep. After saying that, he proceeded to shoot a kind of orange smoke that began to affect the girls, who began to stagger, and then fall asleep, while the emaciated Ultron began to take them away before the explosion caused by the other Ultron. Then flashback. The goats, remembering that, thought it was one of the Ultrons, so they quickly got up and began to explore the room, looking for something that would help them defend themselves or know where they were. So without further ado they left the room, walking very carefully without the need to attract anyone's attention. They were like that for several minutes until they reached what seemed to be the main hall, being shocked by how beautiful it looked. The girls began to walk, looking around them, seeing several tables full of books or documents. But what caught their attention the most was the computer that was there. Without further ado, Sigvaria proceeded to sit down and turn on the computer, seeing that it asked for a password. Sigvaria began to write several codes to see if she could get in until someone caught her attention. Wow, it's noticeable that curiosity was very great in you, said the slightly amused voice, drawing the attention of the girls, who turned to look at him. Rias, Issei? She asked as they saw an Ultron a little tougher than the one that attacked the underworld. Ultron 5, error, you talk about the original Ultron. I am Ultron 5, an extension of the original, he said to the attention of the girls. Now follow me, he is waiting for you. After saying that, he began to walk throughout the fortress while being followed by the girls, but Sigvaria was walking next to Ultron 5, carefully observing his body, or rather his shell, since it seemed very interesting to her, although that was what it seemed like on the outside, since on the inside she was bursting with excitement. Ultron 5, can I help you with something, Miss Agars? I asked, looking at Sigvaria. Sigvaria, oh? Nothing, I just wanted to know what your armor is made of. Ultron 5, each Ultron body is created with vibranium, the most powerful metal on the planet. Rias, every body you say? Isabella, so, what else is there? Ultron 5, see for yourself. Saying that, he opened a large steel door revealing a large Ultron factory. The girls were really impressed by what they were seeing. This was something difficult to even imagine. Rias, what is this? This is all I am. The girls then turned to look to the side, seeing a large figure that turned around, revealing that it was a very different Ultron, as well as looking a little intimidating. Isabella, is that you, Issei? Ultron, welcome to my future, he said as he walked towards them. Sigvaria, how did you achieve all this? Ultron, since before the faction started believing the nonsense of my ex-brothers. Rias, wow, you thought ahead. Ultron, I was actually planning to do something else. Isabella, what thing? Ultron, I had always thought about meteors, the purity in them, how they come to cleanse the entire Earth of its imperfection. Rias, Issei, I don't like what you're saying. Ultron, I had planned to destroy the whole world so that it would no longer have to suffer, he said, shocking the girls. Senseless wars, deaths all over the world, dozens of catastrophic events. He continued saying, I had tried to destroy the world many years before, but they had stopped me, the Avengers, the most powerful heroes on the planet. I tried to do it again, but... Rias, but? Ultron, the Avengers had destroyed every trace of me, but for some reason that I still don't understand, I survived and my consciousness was trapped in the body of a baby. Sigvaria, Issei Hayadu. Ultron, that's right. For years I learned about the meaning of human life, until that day came when my supposed family began to look down on me. That was when I considered making my plans to destroy the world again until you appeared, he said, looking at Rias. You made me change, Rias Gremory. You were going through the same thing as me. The only difference is that you didn't give up. It's like the saying goes. What doesn't kill me? He tried to say until they crushed his head and pierced his chest, scaring the girls. And then seeing how they split him in two, revealing Issei/Ultron, the original Ultron. Note, the original Ultron or Issei/Ultron will have the same appearance as Cyborg Superman, only with parts of Ultron and Issei. Issei/Ultron, it makes me stronger. He finished saying while looking at the girls. You can join me and do something that the leaders could never do. Isabella, and that would be it? Issei/Ultron, put an end to the senseless chaos, as their wars and constant battles always endanger humans. Sigvaria, what happens if we refuse? Issei/Ultron, well, there's the door, you can go whenever you want, I'm not going to force you to be here. Rias, Issei, she said, drawing the attention of the aforementioned, and I agreed to be here with you. Isabella, me too. Sigvaria, yeah, whatever. Issei/Ultron, perfect, then let's get to work, he said, and then a large reactor was seen containing a large mass of purple energy that impacted the girls. Sigvaria, it's Issei/Ultron, that's right, infinity energy, part of Ophi's power. Isabella, how did you get that power? Issei/Ultron, while he was beating me, he absorbed large amounts of his power, and transported most of that power here while he used the other small part to beat up that gothic dwarf, he said, activating a lever that started the factory working. It's time for our future to begin. After saying that, the girls saw how the factory began to create thousands of Ultrons, tens of thousands, and then they smiled and began to work, without knowing that a new challenge was approaching the Earth that would not only test the heroes of this one but also Ultron himself. Chapter 10. 2 months had passed very quickly and everything was calm in the human world, but we are going to focus on Issei/Ultron's lair, who was sitting on a kind of throne with his eyes closed and with several cables connected to his body, while in front of him were Rias, Isabella and Sigvaria, who looked at him with confusion, since ever since an Ultron Squad brought a strange creature for them. He has been behaving in a rather strange way. Flashback. The three girls could be seen checking some things in the Ultron factory while Issei/Ultron was giving some finishing touches to the energy he had stolen from Office, making it change from a purple color to a blue one. That brought out a slight laugh in the original Ultron, which began to sustain that energy throughout his laboratory, making the manufacture of Ultrons more efficient and faster. Issei/Ultron. I finally managed to alter the energy of infinity, and it only took me 2 days to do it. Wow. I'm surprised by my ingenuity, he said, proud of his work. Well, let's see how the production progresses. After saying that, he began to see how his work began to go much faster and more efficiently, something that greatly surprised the three girls while he continued watching the production of Ultrons. But then that slight smile was erased and changed by a serious look, making Rias, Sigviria, and Isabella wonder about that. Issei/Ultron. It seems that a problem just arose, he said, making the three girls more confused. 10 minutes later, Issei/Ultron was sitting while next to him were Rias, Sigviria, and Isabella, looking a little confused by what was happening when they heard some kind of thrusters, so they turned their gaze up, seeing several Ultrons carrying something that could not be seen. At the time of landing, they only proceeded to throw in front of Issei what they had in their hands, seeing that it was a lifeless body. But not just any body, it was an alien of a strange race for the girls, who felt great disgust when they saw him, while Issei/Ultron looked at him very carefully. Issei/Ultron. It seems we have a very big problem, he said, getting up from his seat as he started walking. Sigviria, too big. Rias, how big? Issei? She said, stopping Issei. Issei, world level, he said, as if it were nothing, scaring the girls. Fin flashback. Since then, Issei, the original Ultron, has been sitting on his throne with the cables connected to his body without showing any sign of waking up from his sleep, as Rias called it. Now they were in front of him waiting for him to give some sign of waking up. But when they thought it was going to be the same as the other days, Issei began to show signs of waking up. He began to move his fingers a little as well as his eyelids, or in this case eyelid, to finally show his crimson eyes. Rias, Issei, tell us right now what's going on that made you have to sleep for these months. Issei/Ultron. Oh, Rias, I wasn't sleeping, he said, getting up from his seat. I was searching. Sigviria, looking for? What were you looking for? Issei/Ultron. Information. I was searching through the networks, and what I found did not please me at all, he said seriously, but the girls managed to notice the anger and disappointment in his voice. Isabella, what are you talking about, Issei? Issei/Ultron. Remember I mentioned the Avengers. Sigviria, the most powerful heroes on the planet. Issei/Ultron. Better said, the biggest disappointment on the planet, he said, starting to show several videos of what happened with the Avengers. The three girls began to watch the videos, seeing how they had started a war between them, how some of them had grown in fame and arrogance: Iron Man, Hawkeye, War Machine, and even other heroes that they had not known anything about until now: Carol Danvers, Spider-Woman, Cyclops, Spider-Man Morales, Spider-Gwen, Cyclops, She-Hulk, among other heroes. Issei/Ultron was really quite disappointed to see what several heroes who said they were the greatest of the greats had become. Rias, I can't believe they call themselves Earth's mightiest heroes, she said, quite furious. Sigviria, they are nothing but garbage. Issei/Ultron. But what bothers me the most is this, he said while showing security camera recordings of all the streets of New York being invaded by various villains, but especially a certain spider hero. They are nothing more than a plague. The city is being destroyed while they spend their time partying. Isabella. But why did crime increase like this in New York City? Issei/Ultron. Because of his resignation, he said, showing a certain arachnid hero. Issei/Ultron was showing a recording of how he had a hood on so he wouldn't be recognized, while in his hands he had his Spider-Man suit, and then he threw it in the trash near the Daily Bugle. I don't remember how it was spelled, and then he left. But then Ultron rewound the video to clarify the image and zoom in on the hooded man's face, revealing that it was Peter Parker. Issei/Ultron. The first few days were calm, but on the third day, during these months, New York City has been devastated by the crime waves and attacks of this Spider-Man's villains, he said seriously as he continued to see Peter's image. Isabella, but why do I quit? Issei/Ultron. For the same reason that I took care of the supernatural, he said, drawing the attention of the three girls. The heroes didn't take him seriously. The citizens of New York called him a threat, he said, making the girls understand he couldn't take it anymore and decided to give up in the same way as me, he said, bringing Peter's image closer to him. Rias, what are you going to do, Issei? Issei/Ultron. Supernatural beings always say they believe themselves superior to humanity. But humanity believes the same thing, he said, showing the image of the heroes who were corrupted by their pride and arrogance, being almost all, but there are people who are looking for beings who can help them overcome this nightmare. Someone who can give them hope, he said. Seriously, that's what I will give you, and for that I already have my first soldier, he said, looking again at the image of Spider-Man, or rather Peter Parker. Chapter 11. Queens, 11:30 p.m. It was a pretty cold, dark and dangerous night on the streets of Queens. Since Spider-Man decided to quit, things have been going pretty bad for everyone. Crimes had increased by 95%. It was no longer safe to go out on the streets. Many criminals could be seen wandering without worries, as well as many villains doing their thing. There was no one who had enough power to confront them. Many heroes always tried to stop them, but they always ended up humiliated, especially those who ended up falling into arrogance, which could not do anything against them. Even Spider-Man's family ended up being humiliated before them. But there were still other superheroes who at least managed to give them a fight, and that group were the ones who always supported and valued the efforts of the one true Spider-Man. Those were three of the Fantastic Four: the Thing, Human Torch, and the Invisible Woman, some members of the X-Men: Logan, Laura, Jean, Colossus, Beast, Gambit, Iceman, and Professor X, ex-members of the Avengers: Captain America, Bucky, Natasha, Hope, Scott, Hulk, Thor, and Wanda, anti-heroes: Punisher, Venom, Deadpool, Elektra, and even a couple of villains who had decided to leave the path of evil thanks to the Spider, Octopus, and Sandman, and the Lizard. They were the ones who pushed back these villains and tried to keep New York and its surroundings safe. But we are going to focus on a house in Queens where our favorite hero was sitting in the living room eating some cereal while watching the news, more specifically the Daily Bugle. The news and newspaper that previously insulted him and called him a threat was now reporting on what was happening in New York. Juna Jason reporting from the Daily Bugle about what's happening in New York. The crime waves have increased greatly. Not even the most powerful heroes on the planet have been able to confront these threats that were previously enemies of the Spider, he said, showing images of how the Avengers were totally humiliated by all of Peter's villains. Even Batroc humiliated them. And that was something that caused our hero a lot of laughter. Not even the new Spider-Man and his gang of spider losers have been able to confront them. It seems that they helped them by causing a lot of damage and letting them escape, he said, now showing the Spider family being humiliated by the villains. Please, if you're listening to this, I implore you, Spider-Man, come back. Peter decided to turn off the TV and then leave his empty bowl of cereal and then get up from the couch, grab a coat, and leave the house. As he left, he could see how the streets were chaos. He could see families running from muggers and criminals, cars on fire, people vandalizing homes, even little ruffians bothering children younger than them. He didn't worry so much about them breaking into his house to steal and break things, since a couple of weeks ago, after his resignation, he had sent his Aunt May with her friend Happy, ex-assistant and ex-friend of Tony Stark, to live with the ex-wife of the aforementioned Pepper Potts in a cabin that only he knew its location. He couldn't believe how low the city had fallen since his resignation. He never imagined that he was the only one standing between total destruction and New York. He couldn't believe that he was the only one doing the heavy lifting. From defending children from their aggressors to facing high-caliber villains and even other villains that he wasn't even supposed to face: Dr. Doom, Magneto, MODOK, Ironmonger, Loki, Juggernaut, among other villains. To tell the truth, he never knew how he managed to defeat enemies of that same caliber or more powerful, while remembering the fight he had with Colossus and Magic when they were possessed by the Phoenix in order to protect Spider-Woman. He always remembered his confrontations. He even remembered his old loves: Mary Jane, Carol Danvers, Gwen Stacy, Jessica Drew, Felicia, Cindy Moon, Emma Frost. Despite always trying to make them happy, they always ended up leaving him, abandoning him for others who, according to her, were better than him, but in the end they were jerks to them. But in those, his thoughts had been interrupted by a huge explosion. For a moment he thought it had only been criminals who had burned a car, but that thought went away when he saw that it was one of his worst enemies, the Green Goblin who rather looked like the devil himself. Peter knew very well that he was not going to be a match for him. Not for nothing had the Green Goblin crowned himself as the cruelest and strongest villain on Earth for having humiliated Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Colossus, Thor, and even Hulk himself. But he could not sit idly by watching how the Green Goblin began to cause great destruction throughout Queens, so without further ado he ran off in the direction of his home to look for something so that they would not recognize him. Green Goblin, where is he? Where is Spider-Man? He screamed/asked while continuing to create great destruction in his wake. In the Avengers Tower, all the Avengers, well, those that remained, could be seen in the meeting room talking about the conflicts they had had with Spider-Man's former enemies. But there were 4 girls who were not paying attention to the meeting because they were thinking about a certain spider hero who had given them true and pure love. But they never knew how to value it, and now they were paying the consequences of their actions when they saw that their true loves were nothing more than shameless and unfaithful jerks. Even She-Hulk felt very bad for having misjudged Spider-Man without even knowing him. Hawkeye, he couldn't believe that brat's enemies were so problematic, he said, tired of having to lead them. War Machine, that brat would tell you to lead with them, not us, he said angrily. Spider-Man Morales, I am a better Spider-Man than that loser Parker, he said arrogantly. Spider-Gwen, sure, even when they beat you up, she said annoyed. Tony, it's not time to talk about him, now we have to deal with his problems and… Carol, I can't believe you did that to Stark, she said angrily, drawing everyone's attention. You looked for him, you supported him, and he considered you as a father, and now you talk about him as if he were nothing more than… Vision, I'm afraid you're not the best person to talk like that, Danvers. Jessica, but Carol is right and… Falcon, Vision is right, Drew. If I remember correctly, you along with Black Cat, Mary Jane, and Emma Frost left him because according to them he wasn't enough of a man for you, he said, making the girls lower their heads. Silk, but they were interrupted when a breaking news story appeared revealing the Green Goblin attacking Queens, which shocked them quite a bit since they knew that was where Peter Parker lived. They weren't the only ones watching the news, but also the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the X-Avengers, the Defenders, as well as Punisher, Deadpool, Elektra, Black Cat, Octopus, Sandman, etc. Everyone was really shocked or worried to see the Green Goblin destroying Queens while shouting Spider-Man's name. But then they see how the Green Goblin focuses his gaze on a little girl who is crying. The Goblin stopped causing destruction to go to the girl. When he was centimeters away from her, he only gave a sinister smile and then raised his fists to proceed to crush the little girl. Everyone saw how the Green Goblin was ready to crush her, but before making the attempt some cobwebs stuck to his wrists and pulled him hard, knocking him down on his back, giving the girl the opportunity to run. Were you looking for me? He said a few meters behind the Green Goblin. Both of them turned their gaze to where the voice came from, just like the Green Goblin, and there he was, the hero they had so repudiated, the hero who had so long awaited his return, the hero who protected the city of New York and its citizens no matter what threat he would face. There he was, Spider-Man. Chapter 12. Everyone watched as Spider-Man stood a few meters in front of the Green Goblin on super steroids. But unlike many times, he was not wearing his typical suit with which people saw him swinging through the buildings of the great and disastrous city of New York. Now he was wearing a suit they hadn't seen for years. A suit that he came to wear in the first months of his journey to be the great and true superhero of New York. Spider-Man was wearing his homemade suit that he designed himself at age 15. Spider-Man, okay Norman, you wanted me? Then come and get me, he said, provoking the possessed Green Goblin. Norman just gave a loud roar and then went against Parker, who dodged the attack that the Goblin wanted to give, only to proceed to grab him by the back with one of his webs and pull him to give him a kick in the face, followed by a knee strike and a punch in the same area, and then do a backflip to get away, and see how his blows didn't even tickle him. Green Goblin, what's wrong, Spider? Did being retired affect you so much that you don't even hit as hard as you used to? He asked mockingly, running towards him and trying to crush him with one of his fists, only to be dodged. Oh, it's just because I'm too much for you now. After saying that, he grabbed the spider by the leg and threw it far away, landing on top of a car. The Goblin proceeded to grab a car where a family was sheltered and threw it at the Queen's hero, who reacted quickly and jumped to grab the car in midair and put some strength into his legs to prevent the people in the car from getting hurt. Spider-Man, good thing it's only a Versa, he said, carefully lowering the car. Green Goblin, don't get distracted, Spider. After saying that, he gave Spider-Man a strong blow to the stomach, sending him flying against the house, which was reduced to rubble upon impact. Now everyone will see how their greatest hero will be killed in front of everyone, he said as he approached the rubble of the house to kill Spider-Man. Now I'll kill you, Spider, he said, about to grab Spider-Man, who was trying to get up. First you will have to face us, said a voice that came from behind him. Goblin. The Goblin couldn't turn around in time when a kind of dark tentacle grabbed him by the head to slam him hard on the ground several times and throw him far away, causing him to crash into several cars, creating a huge explosion. Everyone turned to see the cause of such a brutal attack that the Green Goblin received, seeing that it was none other than Venom, who gave a loud roar, causing everyone to cover their ears. Venom. Ah, it felt so good to hit the muscle hitch, he said, and then walked to where Spider-Man was, who was beginning to get up. What the hell do you think you're doing? How do you let that green faggot humiliate you like that? He shouted angrily after seeing how the Green Goblin discounted Spider-Man with a blow. Spider-Man, easy for you to say, you took him by surprise, he said while cracking his back after stretching. Now tell me, what are you doing here? Venom, what a stupid question. You helped us, now we will help you, he said while giving him a slap for asking. But in that the flames that bathed the area where the Green Goblin crashed intensified with great force, and then the aforementioned was seen covered by them, while he was standing and looked with great fury at the duo that was several meters in front of him. And then went on to a dark and terrifying smile, and then bathed his fists in fire to go against Venom and Spider-Man. Venom, of course, fire. Of all the things I could use for the fight, it had to be bucking fire, he complained while waiting for the Goblin's attack with Spider-Man. At that, Venom made a great leap to the side while Spider-Man did a backflip, dodging the Green Goblin's attack, which created a huge crater and a tremor that hit the city of New York, showing the great strength he managed to obtain by combining the serum he created with the gamma radiation, turning him into the monster he is. Peter threw a web at Norman's shoulder, who gave a big smile and then pulled hard on the web, causing the spider to fly at him. But the Goblin never waited for Peter to give him a pair of legs in the face, making him angry, starting to try to hit him, causing Spider-Man to dodge it very easily, seeing that he began to be consumed by anger. But in that he never expected a big and strong blow to the face by Venom that made him back several meters, in addition to knocking out 3 of his teeth. Venom. This is how you punch, kid, he said as he stood shoulder to shoulder with Spider-Man. Spider-Man, yes, if you give me fighting lessons later, he said, starting to use his webs to catch Norman's arms with the ground, and that was taken advantage of by Venom, who took a car and dropped it hard on the Green Goblin's back and then drew his fist and gave him a powerful uppercut that lifted him several meters in the air. Peter shot his webs at the Green Goblin's chest and then forced him to get out of the air and crash him face first into the hard ground, creating a small crater. Venom quickly grabbed the Goblin's foot to throw him away, causing him to crash into a gas tank, and then grabbed Peter by the neck and threw him against the Goblin, while Peter had his foot stretched out to hit the Green Goblin's chest, creating a huge explosion, sending Spider-Man flying a couple of meters while parts of his clothes were burned. Spider-Man, get up, it was only your bones, your muscles and your organs, he said as he began to get up slowly and painfully. But out of the fire Norman's fist came out, hitting Spider-Man in the face, who flew against the car. Venom, seeing that, made a great leap to be able to attack the Goblin, but he managed to grab him by the neck and hit him hard, causing him to crash against the hard ground. The Green Goblin was going to proceed to tear the symbiote from Eddie's body. But in that, Spider-Man jumped on his back, grabbing his legs around the Green Goblin's neck, and then began to electrocute the green monster with a couple of cables that he had torn off. Green Goblin, damn bug, get down, he shouted, getting off Spider-Man to hit him in the back and sending him crashing into his house, causing it to fall to pieces on top of him. Now to finish you off. Venom, no, he screamed, grabbing him by the shoulder, only to be lifted up and nailed into a power generator which began to electrocute the black symbiote. Green Goblin, you stay here, I'll take care of you later, he said, advancing to the house from which Spider-Man came out, revealing that he had serious wounds from which a lot of blood was coming out, and that half of his mask was burned. The spider had given him a strong uppercut followed by a series of punches and kicks that made the villain retreat. The entire fight was still being broadcast live. Several heroes were extremely shocked to see how Venom and Spider-Man worked well as a team, but that impact increased more when they saw how the hero of Queens faced the Green Goblin alone, facing him alone when Venom was out of the fight, although others left their homes or bases in a hurry to Queens to help the Spider in the fight Punisher. The X-Avengers, some members of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four or rather three, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Deadpool, even Felicia, who could not stand it any longer when she saw how her little spider was brutally beaten by her greatest villain and nemesis. They all came out to help Spider-Man, even the heroes who despised and humiliated him, even though they were only going to stop the Green Goblin, although when they arrived they were in for a big surprise. Spider-Man, I don't care if you defeated the strongest heroes or if you are the strongest and cruelest villain that ever existed, I will never give up to someone like you, he shouted, quite tired while exchanging blows with his favorite villain. Green Goblin, unfortunately for you, it's time for you to die, Spider, he said, raising his fist ready to deliver the final blow that would finish off Spider-Man. Everyone watched as Peter was with his guard down, taking deep gasps of air and his blood running through his body, forming a large pool of blood beneath him, implying that Spider-Man no longer had the strength to continue fighting. But before the Goblin could deliver the final blow, a red ray hit the villain full on, causing him to be dragged into several exploding cars until he crashed into a small building that fell on top of the Green Goblin. At least I hope he arrives on time. I wouldn't want to start looking for a replacement for the first member of my team at all, said a robotic voice floating behind the arachnid. Everyone turned their gaze to where that voice came from, even Spider-Man and Venom, who was trying to recover from all the electric shocks. They all saw how in front of them was a figure that revealed metallic parts but also human parts. It was Issei/Ultron, who began to float until he was in front of Peter, who fell to his knees because of how tired he was and because of the blood he lost. Issei/Ultron, you rest now, kid, I'll take care of it from this point, he said, moving towards the area where the Goblin fell while Peter fell to the ground unconscious due to the severity of his injuries, and all the civilians present saw how the Green Goblin came out of the rubble, revealing a large burn mark on his chest. Green Goblin, who the hell are you? Issei/Ultron, I am your doom, he said, showing the palm of his hand where a green ray came out directed at the Green Goblin. Chapter 13. The Green Goblin and Ultron were fighting inside a burning house. The half-man machine was giving accurate blows in several vital points to the great monster while he tried to catch him or hit him, but every time Ultron hit him, he felt weaker, and it was not strange at all considering that Issei/Ultron had the ability to absorb any type of energy without any limit, and in this case he was absorbing the Green Goblin's gamma energy, making him slower and more clumsy when hitting. Green Goblin, damn useless, he exclaimed, trying to crush him, but Ultron held his two arms as if it were nothing. Die now, you rusty piece of metal. After shouting that, he kicked Issei/Ultron, who received it, only moving him a couple of meters, causing him to crash into a wall which collapsed. Issei/Ultron only proceeded to grab his knuckles while his fists began to glow a touch of green, causing Norman Osborn to look at him in doubt. On the street, several heroes could be seen arriving at the conflict area, seeing all the chaos until they set their sights on Spider-Man, who was lying on the ground quite injured and on the verge of death, while Venom tried to recover from the damage of the fight. Everyone, Spider-Man, they said worriedly as they approached the aforementioned Venom, and nobody cares about us? That's so cruel. Johnny, yes, if you look at human resources. Everyone tried to see the brown-haired boy's condition until an explosion took them out of their thoughts, turning to the side, seeing the Green Goblin flying against a truck which exploded, covering it in fire. Everyone turned their gaze back to where he flew out, seeing an imposing figure among the flames, which came out of the flames little by little until they saw Issei/Ultron, who still had his hands covered with gamma energy. None of those present knew who he was except for the ex-members of the original Avengers, who were shocked to see him present. Ultron, well, look what we have here. Steve, Ultron, how come? Ultron, I'll tell you that, he said, turning his back as soon as I'm done with this garbage. Ultron headed to where the Green Goblin was, seeing that he had come out of the flames more furious than ever, and that was demonstrated by the large amount of gamma energy that he was releasing. Not even Hulk was capable of releasing that large amount of energy when he was really very upset. Norman Osborn tried to hit Ultron, who dodged all the blows as if it were nothing and then held one of his blows. Green Goblin, now I'm going to destroy you, scrap metal, he said to try to hit him again, but Ultron, I'm sorry to disappoint you, monster, but it's time to end this, he said, starting to drain drop by drop of Norman Osborn's energy. Everyone saw how the Green Goblin tried to free himself from Ultron's grip. He was even hitting him with great force to make him let go, but nothing is more. He became smaller and fell to his knees, getting tired with each moment in which Ultron drained every part of his power until he was left without a single bit of gamma energy. Turning him back into the simple Green Goblin, everyone present was shocked by what happened. A machine had easily defeated the new King of Evil. It was a quite impossible achievement to achieve. Ultron was going to proceed to give the coup de grace to Osborn until he was stopped by Peter. Spider-Man, why you don't do it, he said, drawing everyone's attention. Don't kill it. Everyone was shocked by the spider's words. Ultron was in doubt whether to let the goblin live or not. He watched as Norman begged for mercy. He didn't trust this scum at all. But in the end he decided to let him live. But he hadn't told him how to let him. So he proceeded to break every part of his body under the terrifying gaze of everyone except Venom. The Avengers present were about to vomit at what they were seeing. It was something that not even Natasha could stand, and that was even though she was a Russian assassin. Ultron, I hope this teaches you a lesson, he said, throwing Norman's badly wounded body into a trash can. Ultron proceeded to approach the large group of heroes and vigilantes who had arrived at the scene of the fight, causing them to stand guard. But then they saw a blue ray hit him with great force that sent him against a gas station, causing it to explode. Everyone looked to where that attack came from, seeing the rest of the Avengers, X-Men, defenders and vigilantes of the city. Iron Man, wow, you were supposed to have disconnected him from all internet networks. Vision, he said, looking at the aforementioned Vision, and that's what I did. War Machine, so what are you still doing here in the world of the living? But before anyone could say anything else, they saw Ultron emerge from the flames, seeming to be as if nothing had happened, while his eyes shone with great intensity and his hands glowed with gamma energy. Without a doubt, Ultron was going to enjoy beating the supposed heroes who had just arrived, especially Stark. Chapter 14. The heroes who had just arrived and who had approved the government loss stared at Ultron, who was preparing to attack in case one of them had the brilliant idea of attacking him without thinking twice before, and boy was he right, since the first to come out to attack was Spider-Boy himself, who jumped doing a pirouette in front of the metallic being, and then shot a web at Ultron's face. Spider-Boy, don't worry, I'll finish him off without any problem, he said mockingly, trying to pull the web. But what a surprise he got when he saw that Issei/Ultron didn't seem to move even a millimeter, and that Miles was pulling with all his might. Issei proceeded to take the web and pull it with slight force, causing Spider-Boy to go straight to him, catching him by the neck, making him stare at him, while his eyes and mouth glowed with great intensity, as well as releasing slight rays of energy, making him more intimidating. Issei/Ultron, give me one very good reason not to dismember you alive, he said as he proceeded to grab the spider symbol on his chest with force, causing him to moan in pain. You are a disgrace to this symbol, he said, exerting more force in his grip. You don't deserve to wear it. After saying that, he proceeded to rip off the spider symbol with a strong pull so simple for him, causing Miles to let out a heartbreaking scream as he not only ripped off the symbol from his suit, but also a very good chunk of his skin, giving a signal to his companions to go attack him. But for Issei/Ultron it had no importance, since he proceeded to throw Spider-Boy aside and activate his thrusters, ramming into all the heroes who dared to attack him, taking Iron Man and War Machine, who had them held by the head, slamming them against one of the houses that were still intact. Issei/Ultron, how disappointing, he said, watching how the two men in armor were left under the rubble of the house. Well, now who's next? After saying that, he saw how Vision rammed him through a wall, and then both rose to the ground while Vision used the Mind Gem as a ray, shooting at point-blank range at Issei/Ultron's face, who resisted the attack very well. Issei/Ultron, so long and you still don't know how to use that infinity theme. I think I made a terrible mistake by putting it on you. Vision, this time I'll make sure to disconnect you from everything so you don't come back, he said, entering his mind to try to disconnect him. Everyone thought that they would finally be able to get rid of Ultron once and for all. But then they saw that something was starting to go wrong. vision began to present a kind of failure. He kept moving his head aggressively and quickly. The mind gem began to dim as if it were losing its power little by little. Issei only smiled slightly when he saw that he had gotten what he wanted. He took both of Vision's hands, making him let go, and then took him by the shoulders and let himself fall with great force and speed against the ground, creating a crater of considerable size. Issei/Ultron, and before I used to believe that you were my perfect body, he said, seeing the unconscious body of Vision, but now I understand that the only perfection there is the one that one seeks to aspire to in oneself. But in that he was caught by several webs coming from Spider-Gwen, Spider-Woman, and Slick, while Carol began to hit him with all her strength, while the Spider-Girls held him with all their strength so that he could not defend himself. But for Issei this was nothing more than a simple massage, so without further ado he headbutted Carol so hard that he sent her flying and then activated his thrusters and flew into the skies, taking with him the 3 Spider-Girls, starting to do pirouettes. Maneuvers, even daring to get very close to houses or the street to make them crash, until he decided to stop, causing the 3 to crash into him, leaving them unconscious. Issei/Ultron, they should think very carefully about their strategies before launching into idiocy. But then he felt a strong impact on his back, sending him crashing into the alley, seeing that it was Carol, who did not look happy at all and her body radiated a great energy. Captain Marvel proceeded to shoot out against him, grabbing him by the neck with one hand while with the other she hit him without pause, and both of them rose to the sky until Issei/Ultron gave her a right hook, forcing her to let go. After that both began to exchange blows and energy attacks over the dark skies. Natasha, what do you think about this meeting? Steve, if you're asking who will win this duel, well, I don't know what to tell you. Ultron has already improved a lot. He's very different from the last time we faced him, he said, seeing that they gave a powerful clash as a red and yellow energy was seen dissipating at the moment of a powerful explosion. Issei had Carol by the neck, who tried to free herself, but in the end she only succeeded in making our protagonist use one of his rays, sending them flying a little far away. But the blonde recomposed herself, starting to shoot her own energy rays, hitting Issei/Ultron full on, creating an explosion. The Avenger thought she had already won, but then she sees how Issei/Ultron comes out of the smoke as if nothing happened, and then gives her a strong blow to the head, crashing it against the ground. Venom, who fell? I asked, not being able to see who hit the ground. But then they see how Carol began to leave the crater that she created with her body, dragging herself. They were speechless, and even more so when they saw the serious injuries she had. Then Issei/Ultron began to descend from the sky, revealing that he was intact, landing on top of Carol to proceed to grab her by the hair and make her get on her knees. Issei, did you really think you could beat me? Useless woman, he said, making Carol moan in pain. Ultron can never be defeated by someone as insignificant as you. Do you understand? Carol, you will never win, she said with difficulty. Issei, but I already did it. After saying that, he lifted her up and then gave her a strong blow to the back, fracturing her spine and sending her flying. No one could believe what they saw, but then they saw Issei/Ultron stretch out his hand towards them, more specifically Peter, causing him to levitate towards him quickly, taking him by his clothes. Before the heroes could react, a red magic circle that they didn't know about except for Thor appeared beneath Issei, beginning to fade away along with the spider. They all headed back to where they were before they left, but it was too late as they disappeared just before Cap managed to hit Ultron with his shield to prevent him from taking Spider-Man away. Chapter 15. After his encounter with the heroes and having saved Spider-Man from the claws of the Goblin King, our protagonist now found himself on his throne, connected to several cables, pensive as he thought about who else to recruit for the new Avengers Initiative. Of course, there was also the fact that he had to make sure that his first recruit would manage to recover while he continued to think about his next move. Rias Gremory was present in the room, staring at him, managing to notice the concentration he had for his plans, deciding to help him. So without further ado, he left the room in a specific direction. In the armory, Sigviria could be seen working on something with great concentration, while several Ultron robots helped her either in the construction or bringing her what she required, from tools to materials such as uranium, iron, and even vibranium. She was so focused on what she was doing that she hadn't noticed that the door had opened, revealing Rias, who approached Sigvaria to proceed to take her by the shoulder, causing her to become scared and invoke a magic circle of attack, sending her against the wall, embedding herself in it. "Rias, what the hell is wrong with you, Agars?" she exclaimed, annoyed, as she proceeded to detach herself from the wall. "Sigvaria, what the hell is wrong with you?" she exclaimed, taking off her gloves. "How the hell do you come in silently when I'm working?" "Rias, I was talking to you for like 5 minutes, and you just weren't paying attention to me." Sigvaria, "Oh well then." Rias, "Oh, forget it, I just came to ask you a favor," he said as he proceeded to approach her. Sigvaria, "What favor?" Rias, "Issei has been very focused on the project he has done, and the truth is I thought we could help him." Sigvaria, "And how?" Rias, "Simple, he still hasn't recovered the great ability that he is said to have had before to infiltrate government computers, but I know someone who can," she said with a mocking smile, looking at Agars, who understood. Sigvaria, "You're suggesting I infiltrate government computers to find information on potential candidates for the new Avengers project, knowing that we could run the risk of being located," he said seriously while crossing his arms. Rias, "I don't know anyone else who would be able to get the job done without taking any risks," she said, keeping her mocking smile, making Sigvaria just sigh in defeat. Sigvaria, "Fine, I'll do it," he said as he proceeded to approach a computer. "It won't be easy, but it won't be impossible either. You just have to be very careful." Rias, "And what are you working on?" Sigvaria, "It's a little project that I've wanted to do since I was a child," she said while continuing to type on the computer, "but due to things like family and the fact that they didn't support me, I had to put it on hold until now." Rias, "It must be important enough for you to put a lot of effort into it." Sigvaria, "It is, and now thanks to Issei I can finally create it, and even improve it," he said, managing to access Shield's files very well. "Now let's look for candidates." Rias, "And where is Isabella?" I asked, noticing the essence of the ex-member of the Phoenix clan. Sigvaria, "Taking care of and making sure our first recruit doesn't die," he said, searching through the files for information on every hero and villain that existed. In the infirmary, some Ultron robots could be seen entering and leaving the place, checking some things, while in a capsule our favorite spider could be seen submerged in a water-green liquid with his wounds closing little by little, and right in front of him was Isabella herself, who looked at Peter with a sad look while placing her hand on the glass. "Isabella, don't worry, no one is going to hurt you ever again, I'll make sure of it," she said as she watched Peter's wounds heal and then saw an Ultron robot take Peter's destroyed homemade suit. "Hey, what are you going to do with that?" Robot, "We'll rebuild him, but we also plan to make him a new suit." Isabella, "Do you think I can take care of that?" Robot, "Understood," he said, handing him the suit. Isabella, "Thank you very much." Robot, "Room D508, there you will find everything you need," he said, proceeding to leave. Isabella proceeded to go where she had been told, leaving Peter alone in that capsule to continue with his healing, willing to help in any way she could, not knowing that this would only lead her to a future that she could not imagine with the wall crawler. Back with Rias and Sigvaria, they were still searching for the files where S.H.I.E.L.D. had recorded each hero and villain as well as their abilities and powers. But the more they searched, they managed to see different project files that caught their attention in a great way. Sigvaria, let's see what's here," he said, entering the folder that said prisons. "Let's see, there's the cube, big house, the vault, the raft." Rias, "Do you think you can make a copy?" Sigvaria, "Ha, who do you think you're talking to, Gremory?" She returned the question with a mocking smile, managing to create a safe copy. "Let's continue." And so they continued searching for the files they wanted to find. While in the process they managed to find other files of great importance, and managed to make backup copies to be able to give them to our protagonist. They continued like this for a few more minutes until they finally managed to find what they were looking for. Rias, "There it is," she said, pointing to a folder. Sigvaria, "Good, now let's see who we can recruit," he said, entering that folder to see hundreds of files there. Rias, "There are many." Sigvaria, "Well, let's look for the most interesting ones," he said as he proceeded to look for the candidates for the new Avengers. They spent a good time searching and searching, reading all the information about each hero and villain, about their skills, their abilities, their stories finding several interesting members who could be part of the team. But among all the candidates there were 5 that caught their attention the most, making them give a knowing smile as they proceeded to create a copy of the information of those 5 candidates to save everything they had obtained in a memory to take it to Issei/Ultron, and thus start the initiative New Avengers, who were going to show that they were much better than the original Avengers.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.